kind of in a little bit differently and looking at what our kids are exposed to, the different types of information that can be considered an adult topic, like the realities of what's going on with COVID, or the topics of sex, war, politics, all of that. Is there any research that shows one way or the other that these kids should be protected? Should they not? Is it better if we're raising, savvier kids in these things, or, anything about that?
Yeah, totally. So here's what we know about all the taboo, let's say, topics that, and the pandemic is sort of in its own bubble here, but let's say, let's talk about sex, war, race, racism, pornography, let's talk about,
or even your own familial money issues or conflict, all of those taboo things.
So this is why parents should have to take a class in child development before they have kids, because there's no topic that you can't talk to your kids about. You just have to know what level to engage them at. So I'm not going to talk to my 2-year-old about pornography, but I am going to say the word penis to my 2-year-old and give them information about, do you see what I mean? Like, people are like, oh my God, did she just say penis on that podcast? Right? because we have these words that we're like, I shouldn't say that. And when we're open and like for the pandemic, I'm not going to show my 10-year-old somebody like suffering on a ventilator, like a video of someone suffering on a ventilator. I might show my 16-year-old who wants to go back to school, and I'm going to show her why that's probably not a great idea. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
What I could say to my 10-year-old is, this is really unpredictable, and some people are dying, and they're suffering, and they're dying, and what we're trying to do is stop it from spreading so much prior to having a vaccine. And that's enough for a 10-year-old. But a 16-year-old can handle more than that. Do you see what I mean? So you really have to be at least a little savvy on what they can handle. And not because you think they can handle it, but because I'm not going to lie to them, but I'm not going to give them all the gory details about whatever it is.
We live in a day and age, though, where all that information is readily available, and kids just have access to phones, the internet, you name it, and they could just find that information themselves and come up with their own interpretations. Their friends might be an influence, say, oh, this shit's hilarious. When in reality it isn't. So even before the parent has the chance to have that conversation with them, they've already formed their opinion.
Or there's also parents who, well, they're gonna see it anyway, so why bother talking about it?
Yeah, I'm so I guess this is the thing where it pays to have a PhD and like my 10 and 12-year-olds don't have smartphones. They don't even have phones. They have iPads that they play games on.
I didn't get a phone until I was 13.
Yeah,
and that was just
13 or 14.
I would wait that was when I was finally allowed to wait at the bus stop by myself.
Yeah. So my kids, I'm very on top of what they are exposed to in terms of media.
And you probably get a lot of, oh, well, you're being too protective.
Yeah. I would think so.
I don't know. I don't, but that's probably also because nobody would probably dare to say
that.
That's
true. Well, and also, Happy Valley is Happy Valley.
Excuse me, what are your credentials?
Oh, no, let me tell you that my kids are definitely in the minority.
Yeah.
Very much in the minority, even in Happy Valley.
Does it bother them? Do your kids ever,
but they understand. because I explain it to them. You don't get a smartphone because it's going to,
With empathy, though.
What?
So you explain it to them with empathy, though, right?
Absolutely. Although every now and then I'll go, it'll rot your brain. No, but no, they
don't be a spoiled little brat.
Yeah, they are very, very aware that things are different for them because of mommy's job.
Right. So what about? And this is something I feel like. We're talking about, obviously, best case scenario, what we wish, and knowing that, the majority do not have the same education or philosophies, whether it's because of they want to or don't want to, or just availability. So parents who, they're wonderful parents,
right?
But they might be very, very overprotective and aren't able to explain it versus the parent. So a parent who won't give a child an iPad, or, as soon as something on the news might come on, they immediately turn the TV off versus a parent who, and I see this, I work in a Title I school, it's whatever, you know what I mean? They're watching my, 8-year-olds are watching it, and they're, a lot of the time watching parents, roll a joint. And so how does that kind of play into it as far as them being protected or not protected from certain information, and how that will affect them as they grow up?
So there's a balance somewhere in between all of that. We know that, I'm sure you've heard the word resilience, and we know that a little bit of stress makes kids more resilient because they learn how to push through stress. I think there's a great Australian longitudinal study that they call it the stealing effect. So if you get stronger when adversity strikes and you rise above it. So like I've been talking to my kids about, think about how much stronger we're going to be when we get through this, when we've kind of dealt with how hard this is, and we get through it, and we know we can make it through this.
But what if they don't have someone having that conversation with them?
Yeah, then if there's too much stress, it's going to break them down. And if they're way too overprotected, they're not going to know how to handle stress when they get out on their own. Those are sort of the two extremes, right?
Yeah, but then looking at that study that we were looking at that graph hypothetically with, you until you're 30 are still able
to modify
to change. It'll be
pretty
harder.
Easily. Yes.
So
pretty easily.
At least there's hope.
There is. And even after, I was 46 at the point where I started really actively trying to train my brain to be less reactive in terms of anxiety, and it worked.
Yeah, that's inspiring.
So yeah, it's there's hope at any age, and I'll say this too. When recent, let's just talk about like the Black Lives Matter movement here for a second. Let's say that what happened this spring is that it's finally reached a critical mass among white people. And it wasn't just white people of a certain age. It was that a lot of white people finally saw, I'm sad to say that because they finally saw it on a video, they dug in to what was actually happening, and people that I never thought would finally recognize their white privilege recognized it.
Yeah.
So it can happen at any age, like change, growth, absolutely can happen at any age.
You just have to be
open,
willing, open and wanting to learn. you
Right.
know, and it's hard. It's very hard, you know, even like my mom she's very open-minded, but at the same time, you know, kind of generationally, there are certain things that you're open to
Yeah.
or not open
Like
to
stuck
learning
in your
about.
ways, pretty much.
Right. And remember what we do. We look for what confirms what we believe.
Yeah.
Confirmation bias?
Confirmation bias. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
It's crazy.
it is. And so that makes it even harder because, gosh, anymore with social media, it's easy to curate a feed that looks like everybody in the world agrees with you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's scary. Scary. Don't get me started. No.
Don't get me started.
So, Molly, looking back kind of on 2 decades or so of experience in this field, what would you say has been kind of the most important thing that you've personally learned?
Oh, in terms of just life, like, or teaching, I think that honestly, the thing that I've learned is that I can introduce some of these concepts to 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds, and they are open and they're moved by it and they remember it, because now it's been 20
I can attest
years,
to
right?
that, you know. I can attest to it personally.
I get students that have been out of school now for 20 years, and they're having babies, and they've had, 10 years ago, started having babies, and I get emails regularly that I just remember what you said about attachment and temperament. I hear your voice in my head. This stuff sticks with people. So what I've learned is that I just get really tired of people like dissing the younger generations. Like, we're all just people, and people want to learn, and the way to learn is to connect. So I talk about my experiences and my, parents' divorce and my relationship with Renee and my kids. And then I open up the floor and students start talking about their parents' divorce and their relationship and all of a sudden we're having this conversation with 600 or 60 people, however many happen to be in that class, and people are learning from each other, and everybody's got something to share. And we start to see commonalities in experience, but we also see so much uniqueness in experience as well. So,
and because they have a safe place to learn and explore those things, can we say that they're forming an attachment to education and knowledge?
That's right. We studied that, right, Jen? We've studied that. I don't know if you've heard of this research, but when we look at children's acquisition of knowledge from September to June, the thing that predicts it the most is the attachment status of their teacher.
Well, kind of in the sense of looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs almost, and what the teacher focuses on. Is that what you're saying?
No, the teacher's own, whether the teacher as an adult is a securely attached individual or insecure. Yeah.
I haven't, but that totally makes sense.
Right? Because
now I'm going to be...
because if she's securely attached, then she goes in and she's sensitive and patient. And her kids, the kids in her class sense that. And so they bond with her and they learn from her because they trust her.
Or him.
Or him.
Or they.
Or they.
Exactly. What do you remember the name of that study at all?
I will find it and I will send it to you.
That'd be awesome. Thanks. I have a word. Sorry, do you ever get either students or colleagues? Well, and again, let's pretend that, people don't know you and what your response is going to be. And so do you ever, or have you ever gotten, well, you know all of this and you say that you practice all of this, but I don't buy it. I don't believe it. What do you say to that?
Well, it wouldn't matter to me if somebody said that at this point, because I know I practice it. But it was nice confirmation over the years to have babysitters from classes.
Mm-hmm.
So I would always recruit babysitters from my students,
Yeah.
right? And they would come to my house and they'd say, well, if I ever doubted it, I don't anymore.
That's awesome, though.
You live
That's
what you
so
teach.
great.
So I know that I do. But I also know that I also make mistakes. And I also know that I'm human. And sometimes I snap at my kids. And sometimes I snap at Renee. And then I apologize. And then I say, here's why I snapped at you. And I'm sorry.
Yeah. And I was going to say that I feel is the biggest part of practicing what you preach, because
Absolutely.
you have to have that part of it and own it. That you're not perfect. And
right.
I know I really always appreciated you talking about those things, not always about what has worked so well,
but what also hasn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so,
humanity.
One of the things that kind of stands out to me here is I had a conversation with a person by the name of Maurice Bierling a while back. And
was that the relationship counselor?
No, Maurice Bierling was kind of a generalist. He's a guy that went to like South America, and he talked about a topic of community building in which they placed a group of people in a room, and they didn't give any context. They just let them sit there, and they noticed a strange progression where everyone was kind of sitting there unsure of what to say. They kind of just sat there silently, but then they sparked a conversation, and the conversation either diverged in two directions. Either one, people either became in conflict and they would start arguing over certain things, or they went a separate direction, which was breaking down these sort of walls of communication and becoming more empathetic and intent on listening to the other's perspectives and stories. And what they've noticed is that it kind of formed a social community in which people ultimately became more open to the thoughts and empathetic to the feelings of others.
Because they were stuck in this bubble kind of?
Yeah. And I'm just thinking to myself.
How long were they in there?
It was a few hours from what I was told.
And they went through that whole process in a few hours?
It was.
Wow.
But I'm just thinking to myself, as children, you mentioned that we're very independent, or we're not very trustworthy of others. So I'm kind of thinking to myself, do you think the real goal here is for society to be more community driven as opposed to individualistic, to be able to, become more empathetic and to be more in tune with our own thoughts and feelings, and to be more compassionate? Because if we go with the former of being individualistic, we kind of stagnate and we don't.
We're individualistic.
I guess really that's what it comes down to.
Yes, every man for himself, right?
Yeah,
that's what it feels like, and that's it's again, I think nobody wants to live in a communist society, and then people start to talk about socialism, and it makes people uncomfortable, right? But the thing is that when what we do as a culture is place the individual above all else, individual rights, individual pursuit of happiness, right? We forget that you can't be a self by yourself. We forget, right? We forget that no man is an island. We forget that resilience requires relationships. We forget that we have to be with other people in order to thrive and survive.
What about those people who say that they can do it themselves? Do you think that that's more of a fear and they're trying to protect themselves, or do you think that there are people who really can survive on their own?
Oh, sure, but let's check back in with them and see what their well-being looks like,
Fair,
right?
Yeah.
Right?
There's no I in team. We have to be. There's a collective
right.
nature to it.
but there's a
Right.
me. No.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of really good research is being done on community building, and that it is incredibly valuable, whether we're talking about the boardroom, or a team, or,
Yeah, I think
a
there's like
school.
there's almost a stigma where people think, oh, community based,
Mhm.
that it's going to be like this hippy dippy
No,
cult
no.
like
Right.
thing, but
Commune.
It's
that's
not.
not what it means.
It's breaking down those walls of insecurity and fear and allowing people
Yeah.
to open up and share how they feel and
And
see
again,
the other
creating
person.
a safe place,
Exactly,
and safe attachment.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
Totally.
man.
So
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier, you kind of touched upon your book a
Mm-hmm.
little bit, but I kind of want to get a little bit better understanding of what this book you're writing is about and
Yeah.
what has been your inspiration for writing it.
Well, I have been asked by students many times over the years, when are you going to write a book? And I was approached by a textbook publisher, which I've been approached many times over the years by textbook publishers. And I've always said no, because the world does not need another textbook,
Yeah.
right? So,
Especially poor college students.
oh, Lord, right. So this one caught my eye because the representative said, we really specialize in non-traditional texts. And I was like, talk to me about what you mean by that. So, long story short, I am writing it as one part textbook, one part parenting book, one part memoir, one part self-help book, and the title of it is Being Human, and it will trace everything that Jen, that you learned in 129.
Okay, so kind of like that introduction and makes
infancy,
you want to know more.
Yeah, from infancy through old age. We'll hit all the highlights. We'll hit attachment, temperament, childhood, identity development and adolescence, romantic relationships, midlife, divorce, marriage, what makes a marriage work, and then successful aging, and yeah, as I say, a mile wide and an inch deep, so to speak,
Yeah.
because it'll give a little. I could write a book on each one of these chapters, but it'll be just an introduction to it all.
I
so
love
that
it.
people can have their curiosity piqued in terms of maybe looking deeper into whatever resonates the most with them.
That's awesome. So is this book going to be the textbook that you use in your class?
Yes.
Or will other people, like, it's going to be
Both.
sold in bookstores?
Yes, both.
When?
Yep.
When can I?
December. It'll be
In
out
December?
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Okay.
So it's coming. I promise it will be done by then. I'm already about, a third of the way finished. So.
Well, that's
Nice.
awesome. Looking forward to reading it when it
Thanks.
comes out.
Was
Yeah.
there, I mean, and you kind of talked about it a little bit, but was there any one specific inspiration, other than this being a non-traditional text, but an inspiration for,
To say
finally writing
Yes.
it? Yeah.
Yeah, the pandemic.
Okay.
Yeah,
if
it's fair.
not-
Yeah.
Totally fair.
If not now, when? Well,
Exactly.
I'm a musician and I'm not.
We were
gigging.
just gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the gigs, our regular weekly gigs stopped at the beginning of March, and although we're doing some private live streaming parties and playing a couple of outdoor gigs here and there.
Mhm.
We're
Yeah,
not
you're
gigging.
doing like the driveway.
Yeah, the driveway series. which are good. It's going really well. We're having a blast doing
Yeah.
it.
I had the chance actually to see your band perform at one of the bars around State
At the
College.
first.
This was a year ago.
Yeah.
I think. Jen took me to Penn State to see a
I was
football
like,
game.
that's my teacher.
I was kind of surprised. I'm like, you're a professor, and you play these gigs late at night at these bars at State College. So I'm curious, like, what is like the story behind all of that?
Well, and for context, for everyone who didn't go to Penn State and doesn't understand, like, we're not at, the bar that no one goes to. Like, you're performing at the bars where this is the 21st birthday bar.
Yeah.
Any social circle or whatever you're into, everyone at some point goes to the first. And that's not the only place that you play, but like, this is like the cool place to be.
Yeah.
And you're there like every night.
Well, Friday nights, but yeah.
Well, every weekend.
Yeah, every weekend. And yeah, so how did it get started? So a brief history is that, so I've always been a musician. And when I moved to State College at the end of 97, I moved here to kind of get reacquainted really well with my mother. My parents divorced when I was very young, and I was raised by my dad and wonderful stepmother.
And your mom was actually a professor at Penn State too.
Yes. And I didn't really see her much until I was 19. And then I only really saw her off and on at 19 because we didn't live in the same town.
Mm-hmm.
So I had gotten out of a really long-term awful relationship and was like, what do I want to do? And I said, you know what? I can do anything. I was 27.
I remember you explaining it's in class too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to go and I'm going to move in with my mother. Like, I'm going to move in with my mother. Not because I needed to. I mean, I had money. I had but because I want to. And I lived with her for about 9 months. And during that time, because she was also a teacher here at Penn State, I got the opportunity to teach one class for HDFS.
Was this before all of your education in human development and family studies?
It was, but it was, I had a master's degree in speech pathology. I'd been working with children. So I, as an adjunct, I had the knowledge to teach a child development class. Mm-hmm. So I did. And I also, was bartending at the first and,
never knew that part.
And was ready to start getting, my feet wet in the music scene here. And a band came in to the first on a Tuesday night, and they were amazing. The name of that band was Sideshow Bob, and Renee, my husband, was their bass player, and there was no one in the bar. It was dead, and I was like, what is going on with the people in this town that they wouldn't be out here? I get it that it's a Tuesday night, but whatever.
But it's a Tuesday night. You're in class now.
Yeah, right? And mind you, it's 98. So all bars, you guys probably aren't quite old enough to realize that. Like in a college town,
I was 7 in 1998.
Probably 6. I don't know.
They go through cycles. And I mean, the first has always been popular on the weekends, but, it really built up the weekday crowd over the last 10 to 15 years. So anyway, the band is amazing. I'm just blown away, dancing my butt off behind the bar, and they come and sit down at the bar for their set break, and I'm like, wow, you guys are amazing, and they can't believe there's nobody in here, and we were talking and laughing, and I was like, you guys need a chick. That's what it is. You just need, and they were like, oh, please. Like, literally, I could just feel their eyes rolling because they didn't know me. I was the bartender.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they gave me a chance, and that became Maxwell Straight, which was after Maxwell Straight, the Ted and the Hi-Fis is probably the band you guys saw on Fridays.
Yeah.
But Maxwell Straight was still me, Ted, and Renee. So it wasn't, it was just a different version of almost the same band. So, what happened is that I just never stopped playing.
That's awesome.
I mean, I just didn't. I mean, I love making music, and you just figure out a way to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
Did you immediately know that Renee was your guy?
No, I did not. But Renee knew that I was immediately his girl. So
That's
he
funny.
he was on the path. But I adored him. So it was just, he had a girlfriend, which was funny. I mean, he'll tell you that the minute he met me, he thought that he was going to marry me, but he was standing next to his girlfriend when he met me. And yeah. And so I think probably for me, it was like, I mean, I thought he was really cute and cool and whatever, but he had a girlfriend. So whatever. Right. Then it was like over the string of the next 4 years, it was like either he had a girlfriend or either he was dating someone or I was dating someone,
Mm-hmm.
right? It went back and forth and back and forth. And finally in the beginning of 2002, we were both single, and he was like, we're both single. And I was like, at this point, we'd been in a band together for 4 years. And I was like, dude, this would rock the band. And he was like, I'll quit the band if it gets bad. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's no like, okay. So we went out on a date, and he proposed that night, and I said yes, and we got married 4.5 months later.
Wow.
What?
Have you heard this story before, John?
I feel I've probably heard parts of it, but I didn't remember. That's awesome. That's so
an
cool.
awesome story, yeah. Wow.
And it rocked the band in the other way now, in the good way.
Yeah.
And I bet that made it a lot easier with your kids and stuff, because you're both in the same.
We've had our ups and downs and challenges, but what we have is a very strong commitment to continuing to work on ourselves and each other's, our relationship with each other. So, yeah, we've made it work. Boy, there were some years in there that we got very, very little sleep. When the kids were, we'd always have some babysitter, obviously, during our gigs. But what we didn't have was somebody the next morning when it was time for the kids to wake up. So, there were a lot of years where it was mostly me, because I need less sleep than Renee, and I'm the mom, and I was nursing them right through all of that.
Right.
That I think I got, there would be like 3 or 4 nights a week where I got 4 hours of sleep.
Yeah, I couldn't do that. I need 8 hours of sleep.
So basically, the only quote unquote help to make it work that you could be teaching all day and then gigging all night was a babysitter. So basically, you're superhuman. Or was there any, how did you make that work?
Well, I was able to always have my classes be taught, not always, but as much as possible. Most of my classes never started before 11 a.m. So even though I couldn't sleep in, it's not like I had to be up and on at 9.
Right.
So that helped.
That's nice. Does your music and your teaching overlap at all? Is there any influence on your music from your teaching or vice versa?
Well, it's all performance, right? I mean, honestly, it sounds weird to think of teaching as a performance, but when you have 600 students,
Yeah, true.
it's a performance in some ways. I call it like half stand up, half I'm going to try and impart knowledge here.
Yeah.
So I'm comfortable in front of people, but the connection is authenticity, right? So
Okay.
I think that if you sat in my classroom, then you know that I'm an authentic person. I'm right. I
100%. Yeah.
I am I bear it all. I don't
And
hold
anyone can
back,
see
and
that even just through our
and
conversation so far.
yeah. And I think too that Tesh, if you saw me perform, then I think you would probably say, I would hope you'd say the same thing about seeing me sing on stage, is that that's me.
He did not believe me. He's like, no, this woman is a musician. There's no way she was your professor. Yeah. And I was like, I promise you, I will show you my old notebooks that have her name on it. Like, I promise.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, was it ever an issue partying with your students? But like, on the other side of that, I would say no, because if you're showing your true self and presenting that real you, it builds that trust with your students, so that when they're in your classroom, they are open enough to have conversations.
And we felt that you got it.
Yeah. Right. And it's not. I always like to say it's not like we went out together and like we just happen to be partying at the same place.
Right.
So it's not like I'm. Renee would probably say, there were probably a couple of nights in there where you may have, maybe you were out there partying with your students instead of just going to sit down on the set break. Probably. But I'll tell you this, I've never showed favoritism in terms of like, if you come to, I don't, my students know me well enough to know that they're not going to get bonus points because I saw them at a gig.
Yeah.
They're not going to get special favor. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
It's just that's not my style. I mean, I treat all my students equally, whether they come out to a gig or not. So, and they know that.
What about your colleagues or, the director of the department? Is there ever, oh, well, you need to stay more professional? Has there ever been an issue there?
There was a time about, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6, 7 years ago where there was, I think maybe what happened was that one of my colleagues must have friended me on Facebook and seen how much I was gigging. And I think that she thought there's no way that can't be interfering with her
teaching ability. Okay.
Yeah, right. And so my department head asked me, not the one that I have now, but previous, asked me essentially, is this in conflict? And I said it isn't to me. And if you have any, complaints or evidence, and he said, no, your SRTs are the highest in the department. So
what is an SRT?
Those are the student evaluations that you get.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. So, I think there's just certain people in the world who are going to be kind of sticks in the mud when somebody's not traditional.
Right.
And then I don't know, I can't speak to things like jealousy and that kind of thing, but, it's very clear that I love my life, and it's very clear that I live it to its fullest. So if that makes somebody uncomfortable, that's on them and not on me. So I don't feel that anymore at all from anybody in my department, in my college. Our new dean is a musician. My new department head.
I didn't know that.
Yes, my new department head, or not new, but the current department head is a musician. So we got together and played at our Christmas holiday party last year together. So
That
School
is
of Rock.
so cool. School of
Yeah.
Rock. Yes.
yeah, exactly. So it was, I think those days, I think I've finally moved past anybody questioning whether or not I can do both.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, so we're friends on Facebook.
Mhm.
I requested you. It was after I graduated. It was probably only a couple of years ago. I graduated in 2014.
Mhm.
Do you often get students trying to connect with you on social media? And how do you handle that?
I love it. So I don't know, probably about 4 years ago. So after you graduated,
Yeah.
I finally was like, oh my God, if you can't beat them, join them. And I started putting my Instagram and Facebook up on the screen at the beginning of class, at the beginning of the semester. And
Is it a
said,
separate one? Do you have like a professional one and then
nope,
your personal
it's all
one?
me, because why would I even bother trying?
Does your band have one?
Yeah, but nobody really follows me on Instagram.
If you're in the know, you're in the
That's
know.
It's so different though. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess as an elementary teacher, obviously there's issues there, so that could never happen. But, everyone's an adult,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
Yep. But I will say, I haven't looked recently, but I think I don't know how Facebook works, but I think I'm reaching my friend limit. So it might be that over the next couple of years, I actually have to create
like a page thing.
like
Yeah.
a Molly Countermine page to follow instead of
It's a good idea.
For all of your
Instead of-
fans, your fan page.
my former student.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
But yeah,
awesome.
I mean I love it. I love keeping in touch. I love hearing from former
Well, and we wouldn't be
students.
talking to you right
Exactly.
now. It's
See? Exactly.
It's awesome.
So connection is a good thing.
It is. It really is. Connection.
Yeah.
Love it.
It's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Molly, we're coming up on 3 hours here. So
We can
Oh
keep
my
going.
gosh.
we could,
Wow.
yeah,
Talk to you
yeah.
forever.
But usually before we end the show, I like to close things with 5 quick fire questions.
Okay.
And they're just short responses
Okay.
If they need to.
if they need to be. Yeah. So
Okay.
we'll just get started here with
Okay.
question number 1.
Mhm.
What is one simple thing that people can do to be more mindful, empathetic,
Or empathic.
or compassionate?
So I have so many. How about this? And this is the truth, and I learned this from my daughter. You can read books. And I mean you can read fiction, because what happens when you read a book is you are actually in another person's shoes, because
Wow.
you're reading what they wrote. And the research is clear that reading increases empathy.
You become more attached to the characters.
Yes.
To
And
make
Wow.
connections. This is what I'm teaching in 4th grade, to make connections.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
always
To read.
wondering this, because when people watch TV shows, they become overly attached to some of the characters, and
Yeah.
when they die, it's like, well, shit, that sucks.
Yeah, right?
I was
so
not
there's-
expecting that answer, Molly. That was a good
Yeah.
one.
reading fiction or memoirs, I would say.
Love it. Okay, here's a really, really hard one. If I decide to start wanting to teach adults, can I come be an assistant professor with you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to hold you to that. And
Come on.
What has been your best parenting fail?
And we say best on purpose. Your best parenting fail.
Oh my. So the most recent one was that we got a above ground pool for the summer because of the pandemic, and we, after about a week, both boys had, actually all 3 of them had earaches, And I was like, oh, you're fine. Oh, you're fine. Oh, you're fine. And
That's not
finally,
very secure. No.
I know, right? Well, I was like, I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, whatever. And anyway, when I finally took them, they all had ear infections, and Leo's was both inner and out and middle ear.
Oh, like, just from swimming?
I'm so sorry, I didn't believe you. Yeah. Like, oh my God. And I'm even supposed to be like the speech pathologist with the training, right? Like, I was so just not, it wasn't like I wasn't believing them, but I just was like, I mean, it's not like this is the first time they've ever swam every day. We've had pool passes for the last 15 years. They go all the time.
And so it wasn't just swimmer's ear. It was a legit, like, ear infection.
Legit.
Wow, that's crazy.
How did that even happen?
I have no idea.
I don't know.
Oh.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I think because they were literally swimming all day, every day.
Yeah, true.
So,
true.
Anyway, that felt like a big fail.
Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
But
totally.
you learned from it.
I did. I felt so bad, too. And I also had to give Leo antibiotics and put eardrops in all their ears.
Aww.
So that was fun.
So fun. Okay.
Everybody's fine now, though.
Good. We're glad.
If listeners only take away one thing from this conversation, what do you want it to be?
Your life is what you will make of it. It is your life. So follow your heart. And you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start now and change the ending. And that's C.S. Lewis.
Ugh.
Love that.
So inspiring. I want to end on that, but I also have a really fun question.
Okay.
Fun for me. I don't know.
Okay.
Okay. So either Lucy or Leo or I forget your last son's name, Eli. So it's probably at least 10 years from now. Mm-hmm. They just had their first child. Mm-hmm. Neither them nor their significant other has slept in days. They're wearing their underwear inside out. They have cereal dried in their hair.
Yep.
Everyone's crying. They have no idea what's wrong or why they're crying. It's just, what you're stereotypically like, oh my God, I just had a kid and I don't know what day it is.
Yep.
They call you. You pick up the phone.
Yep.
What do you say to them?
I'll be right there.
Aw, that's perfect. That's so great.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you can say, really.
Right there, yeah. I like that
I'll
a lot.
Be right there.
Oh. Yeah. And maybe put on some clean underwear.
Yeah, right.
Oh, man. Yeah. I love it.
Well, Molly, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show.
Oh, thank you both, Tash and Jen.
Oh,
and you pointed out your book, you pointed out social media. So if listeners out there are interested in getting in touch with you, learning more about you, the work you do, or have other questions for you, how can they do so?
Oh, I would just give them my email address, msc7@psu.edu.
And we have it. We can post it.
Perfect.
Cool.
So awesome. So, Molly, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Tash, thanks for letting me
come. Yeah. Thank you, Jen, for co-hosting.
And look forward to Don't Get Me Started, the new
Don't Get Me Started.
New podcast.
All right, everyone. So that will do it for this episode of the All Things Interesting podcast, and we'll conclude the 3-part series with our guest, Dr. Molly Countermine. I hope you all really enjoyed the conversation. I know we both did. It was really interesting to get Molly's insights on kind of the aspects of human development and family studies, and to kind of just give a really unique perspective on what it is to be human. So that said, if you enjoyed the episode or the podcast, I encourage you to subscribe on your favorite platform, and please drop a comment with your thoughts or feedback on the show. And again, thank you as always for tuning into the show, and stay tuned for future episodes of the All Things Interesting podcast.